bite-sized explainer video kind of ish formats to like make a hook, because when the student gets like interested in the subject, they're actually willing to go through great length to learn more, and then they'll listen to the 2-hour podcast, and they will read the book about the subject.
All right, so I would like to welcome everyone out to this panel discussion where we will be talking about effective education in the digital age. I'm very excited to be here with our panelists here. I'm Kay Banks, and I will be the moderator for this panel discussion. So the format for the rest of this discussion, I will let the panelists go ahead and introduce themselves, give you a little bit about their background and their expertise, and we will move forward from there. So I'd like to open it up. Ingeborg, would you like to go ahead and start?
Yeah, hello. My name is Ingeborg. I'm from Denmark. I'm a motion graphics designer, illustrator, and a game developer. And I use my skill within the learning, within the realm of learning design and curriculum design. Yes?
Yeah, awesome. Sounds great. Thank you and welcome.
I love it. Thank you.
Go ahead. Nice. Next, we'll go ahead to Wajahat.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Wajahat. I am currently an instructional designer at the Parsons School of Design and the new school. I've been in instructional design for a few years now, even before I knew I was in instructional design. I did my master's here in Colombia and have been working in education and educational technologies for the past 7 years. And I'm excited to join all of you.
Awesome. Welcome. We appreciate your presence. Thank you. Andrea, let's hear from you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea. I am originally from Venezuela, grew up in the States, and now I live in Spain. I was a teacher from 2012 till 2022, last year, a classroom teacher, and also like out of school time teaching as well. In Central America, in the US, and in Spain. I did that for 10 years. In 2016, I did a coding boot camp, and in 2018, I integrated my education and tech background to create Refugees Code in Madrid, where we teach new arrivals how to code and get accustomed to the new city that they're in. And since then, I've worked as a program manager.
Awesome. Thank you all. We really appreciate you being here. As you can see, we have a wealth of knowledge among us, and we are very excited to dive into how the digital age and all of the technological advancements really are affecting education and always. So we'd like to go ahead and open up the panel discussion. I have a list of questions, and so we'll ask them whether they're targeted or aimed. And if anyone from the panel would love to answer a question, just let me know, raise your hand in any way. And then after we have a certain amount of time for the discussion, we'll open it up for, live Q&A to hear from some of the audience if there are any audience questions. So let's go ahead. This one is aimed at Wajahat and Ingeborg. Are the educational institutions or institutes prepared for an imminent change that is coming? If they're not, how can they prepare and get ready?
The short answer is no. But we're getting there. Yeah?
Yeah, I would also agree with, it depends on where you are and where you're asking that question and which country you're focusing on. Here in the US, particularly on the higher education side, I think COVID definitely pushed everyone to be prepared, and it it was sort of the push that got everyone to at the very least have some basic infrastructure in place. And you'll also be surprised to know um, uh, how mature the edtech field really is, even though the phrase edtech has been coined very recently. Since the advent of internet, people have been thinking about using it for the sake of education, and you'll find a lot of tools um, that are introduced these days as really innovative tools have actually been here for a considerable amount of time, since the 90s, since the 2000s as well. So it has been here for a long time. And especially higher education has been trying it out since then, and COVID just got everyone to, for everyone to at least have a basic infrastructure for online teaching and learning to be in place. But once again, I am originally from Pakistan, so I spent a considerable time working over there as well. And I can say that over there, we don't, like, even after COVID, not every institute has that basic infrastructure in place. So I hope that that sheds some light. But regardless of that, with the smartphone coming in and even those markets proliferating in developing countries and across the globe, there is still a shot that universities and schools can take. Which will be easier than it was in the past. But this, yeah, that's my take where we're at.
Yeah.
I
Awesome. Well,
totally
I
agree.
definitely. Sorry, go ahead, Ingeborg. No,
I
carry
was
on.
just going to add that I totally agree. In Denmark, we are facing several roadblocks. It's more in the shape of legislation and the whole personal data security issues we have to figure out. And then afterwards, like the big task ahead of us is really like designing like the curriculum, developing how is an academic curriculum going to look online, how are we going to make it immersive and engaging for the students. And the other thing is we have to educate the educators to give them the digital literacy to take on board these digital tools, because a lot of them have no idea how to translate their teaching into a digital space. So that for me is like the two big tasks once the higher ups have made up their minds about the rules and personal data security issues.
Yeah, thank you both. I really appreciate your perspectives on that. You both mentioned digital tools and the trends that have evolved over the past few decades. And this is open for all panelists. Can you highlight any of the advantages of incorporating the digital tools and resources in education? What are the pros of using digital tools now?
I can answer this. So digital tools nowadays, I mean, it's been happening for a long time already, but there's assessments that students can take to see what level that they're on, and then they can get lessons that are based on that original assessment, and then it's actually curated for that student so that they can follow along in the lesson, but increase at their own pace instead of the pace of like 25 other students. And so that's a great way to use technology and these digital tools to curate education for the students.
Thank you. Actually, that kind of leads into the next question that's aimed at you, Andrea. how has technology, or how does technology allow teachers specifically to meet the specific needs and learning preferences of each of their students?
Yeah, I mean that is a big example of how you can do that. And now even with I know Khan Academy is creating Khanmigo using AI so that it's even more of a like powerful tool for the individual student. So basically it's there as a individual tutor for every single student, which up until today, we've known that that's the best way for students to learn, to have one-on-one teaching, but it just has never been possible because there's not enough teachers. Literally everyone would have to be a teacher so that everyone would have a teacher. So it hasn't been possible until now. And now we can really use this GPT technology to curate what students need. And so Khanmigo is doing a really great job at that and creating it so that it actually can help guide the students in any content that they're learning, but without like just giving them the answers. It's more there to just like help guide them. So if a student asks for an answer, Khanmigo's like, sorry, I can't give you an answer, but what do you think the answer is? And then it guides the student from there. And then if the student's wrong, then the chat bot will ask, well, what makes you think that, or why can't it be this other thing? And then it guides the student to the answer instead of just giving the student the answer. So that's one way that just even like from what was already available years ago when I was teaching in Miami, where students could assess where they were and then curate their learning. Now it's even more personable and it becomes a one-on-one tutor.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Great example. Anyone else would like to share on how technology allows teachers to meet the specific needs and learning preferences of their students?
I can add on to that. Thank you, Andrea, for mentioning Khanmigo. I've also just been equally blown away by their demo, and then trying things out on GPT-4 myself. I haven't been able to get access to Khanmigo yet, but oh my God, it's been amazing. It's been everything we've been wishing for to have in education. It's for definitely on the students as well, but also to add to what you just mentioned, it's amazing for in terms of what it can do for teachers. A big challenge in meeting students' needs was that at one point it gets too much to ask from teachers to to scaffold their lessons and every experience that they make for all sort of learner needs, because teachers in general are very overwhelmed and have a lot that they need to tackle all at the same time. With a tool like Khanmigo or GPT-4 in general, teachers can offload a lot of their work. For example, brainstorming lesson ideas, thinking about activities, coming up with content, revising content. It really works as not just as a teaching assistant, but an expert teaching assistant who knows a lot about everything. And a lot of and offers a lot of pedagogical assistance as well. So when you have a tool where teachers can offload a lot of a lot of the preparatory work that they had to do, you leave teachers with more time to focus in on the students, spend more time with them, try to understand what they're really struggling with, and then use that information, feed it to GPT-4 again, and come up with content that really scaffolds things for them. So not only is it super useful in customizing education and meeting student needs when students are using this tool, but also it helps teachers do the same, especially for students who won't be engaging with that tool. So yeah, it's a great time to be in education, and with these tools coming in. It was a long time coming, and I'm glad we're finally there.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, with this new age that we're in, it has also increased distant learning and online learning. Before, you could only really find that in the higher ed space, but now it's gone down to secondary education. So the question now is, with distant learning and remote learning solutions, with them being adopted so rapidly, how can we retain the social experience of the conventional in-class learning environments as opposed to the online and doing everything via computer? Yeah. I will open that up. Wajahat, if you want to take that one, then we can pass it back to Ingeborg, and Andrea, if you guys feel comfortable answering that one. Yeah.
Okay, so that is definitely a tricky one. Making Because that is the main challenge of online learning, right? You can set up spaces for students to connect with each other. As an instructional designer here at the new school, we are making online courses on a daily basis, but on the higher education level. And the main challenge that we deal with is like, okay, we can set up discussion spaces, we can set up collaborative activities, group activities, and all of that, and it will get students to talk to each other, share their ideas. You can, you can ask students to submit their assignments in a way that everyone else can see. You can also force them to reply to at least one of their peers, but it's not the same. And that is something that, that everyone has to acknowledge with the current state of things. But that doesn't mean that what we have is something that can be completely dismissed. You still, for example, when we engage with social media, we still, we're still able to connect with people by reading their posts. We're still able to understand, or get a view of what people are going through by seeing their pictures or videos. So that exists. It does have some effect on people. So when you set up a discussion based space for students, they may not like it as much as they would like talking to each other in person. They will still be able to, get something out of it. So the best that we can do as educators in an online space is giving students that space, and and scaffolding it with prompts, with questions, with activities, things that encourage them to talk, and more specifically talk to each other, and then let things take their own course. Every batch of students in general is different from each other. Sometimes you're teaching in person, you have a talkative bunch, and have a great time. Sometimes you don't. The same happens in an online classroom as well. Sometimes, they discuss a lot, sometimes they don't. So that's how it is. It's just our responsibility to set that up.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, so
Should I just
sorry, go ahead, Ingeborg.
I mostly agree. I have a background in gaming, and I would really encourage, when we are like making learning, designing learning systems, it's maybe a good idea to look at what's already working. Like I observe different people come together from all over the world, like solving very complex tasks in World of Warcraft, Heroes of the Storm, Black Seas, and even Minecraft. And there's something about it just work, and I think there's will really be some key findings, like in investigating what is it about these kind of tasks, what is about these visuals that is so emerging and engaging for people, that strangers is coming together online and solving these very complex imaginary tasks. But yeah, it is a challenge, and it is a challenge we have to face it on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I can say that I completely agree with what both of the other panelists have said, but especially with the using gaming, like people have been connecting online since online was accessible to people. And even before that, people had pen pals. Like people have socialized with people around the world, and not in their local place since they had the tools to do it. So I think it is, like Ingeborg said, to a focus on making it fun. Make it fun for people and people will show up.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Moving on to the topic of inclusivity, Andrea, how can we address the issue of some students having limited access to technology and ensure that there are equal opportunities for all students to use technology for education?
Yeah, so this is something that I've experienced and seen myself. My first 2 years teaching, I was teaching in Central America. I didn't even have Wi-Fi in my house where I lived. So it was really difficult to come up with curriculum ideas and make things fun. It was a lot of crafts that year. But nowadays, it's like even in places like Honduras, almost everyone has a cell phone. So I know Wajahat has mentioned this earlier, but like having access to a cell phone is very powerful as long as there's internet wherever people go. So if more platforms can focus on that, that will make it more accessible worldwide. There's a number that I can't remember. There's like a percentage of people that have access to cell phones around the world, and it's really high. But the percentage of people that have access to a laptop is around, like worldwide, is very low. So if we want to make these platforms accessible for everyone globally, we do need to think about them being accessible on a phone, on a cell phone. And I know that that becomes difficult with things like coding, as like I know I've worked in a company that actually has a learning app for learning how to code on your phone, but that can only get you so far. So I know there are limitations to what you can do on a phone and what you can learn on a phone, but apps like Duolingo that gamify learning, that is a great example of making things accessible. But then also like on a more local scale, on what people can do is, and schools and communities can do, is making sure that their students actually have access to internet when they're not at school. And so that they can have access to all the information that is available on the internet. So whether that's working with, in the US, I know people, there's communities that will work with nonprofits to make sure that students can have Wi-Fi in the home. And also at Refugees Code, the organization that I founded, we actually would get donated laptops and then use those laptops for the students. And then at the end of the course, the students would get to keep the laptop. So just making sure that people have access to these tools, so that they can, get the same information that is out there for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that, Andrea. Anyone else? Awesome. That's so Andrea, you mentioned equal access for internet and Wi-Fi. This next question is open to all panelists. Do you think that technology is widening or bridging the gap between the underserved and the privileged?
I guess I can speak up on this, but I guess it depends on where you are, what resources are available. But like even today, I know that people in Honduras now have smartphones. When I lived in Honduras 11 years ago, 10 years ago, I had like a brick phone. I had a Nokia phone. I mean, I had my smartphone from the States, but I didn't use that because there wasn't internet anywhere. So, but nowadays, because I still have friends there, everyone has a smartphone. So their access is starting to shorten like the gap, but at the same time, there's things like AI and these tools that are like growing so intensely and so quickly that I feel like if you would have asked me this question prior to the new year, I might have been like, yeah, it's definitely closing the gap. But like now with AI, with how quickly it grows things, I do worry that like companies and the 1% that own these corporations will only continue to line their pockets and be able to increase their productivity while their workers and everyone else gets less and less access to the outcomes, aka money, that come from the increase of activity of productivity. So it's a complicated question and it's hard to answer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely a complicated answer for sure. And it's almost dependent upon the region where you reside. So thank you for that perspective, Andrea. So we're going to move from inclusivity to traditional teaching methods using technology. And this one is saying at Ingeborg, how can we find a balance between incorporating technology in education while still preserving very important foundational knowledge?
I don't believe that the one excludes the other at all. I think it's more finding a balance between making really immersive, powerful, maybe almost sometimes cinematic learning experiences. Oh, sorry, was my neighbor's tractor? And then still preserving, like still giving them the knowledge they need. And it is difficult, like making something very close to, like we like to make our learning experience so entertaining and immersive as possible, but still preserving this knowledge we actually want the students to obtain. And it is difficult, but I have found that meeting the students where they are at, like getting inspired from YouTube formats they like, explainer formats they like, use that wording, talk to them as they're normal people, because they are normal people. And make it very clear at the beginning of every explainer video why we are teaching people this, and why it's important for them, the viewer, the student at this point, because students, like they have so many learning experiences to choose from, so they become quite selective. So if they're watching something they can feel it's not for them, they're going to the next thing. So yeah, but finding that balance it's hard, and it's an art form.
Absolutely, an art form is a good term for it, finding that balance. Moving on to the next section, I know that Andrea talked about the advantages of technology with assessment, so I'm going to target this one to Wajahat. As an instructional designer who deals with feedback exclusively, what are the advantages of digital assessment methods compared to traditional exams? And how effective are they in evaluating student performance?
So the simple answer is digital assessments are everything what traditional assessments were, and then some. You have this, it's essentially the same thing. In a traditional environment, you were either asking students to submit a paper, complete an exam, complete a quiz, probably if it was a skill that you wanted them to learn, you would ask them to demonstrate that skill. Nowadays, you can get them to submit, all of these things on an LMS. I mean, you can ask them to submit this anywhere, even through email, but having an LMS, an integrated system for all of these things, really helps you organize. So now instead of having a pile for you to go through, everything is collected in a digital space, which may firstly make things easier. But the biggest advantage that we have is with automation. When you build quizzes and you sort of code feedback within an assessment, students, they are graded immediately. They get the feedback that they need on the spot. And third, it once again, connecting it back to what I mentioned earlier, it leaves teachers to do more. It relieves them the burden of assessing objective assessments and going through their grading and spending a considerable amount doing a lot of that grunt work, and shifts their attention towards things that require more of their attention. So this way, when they use all of these automation features within learning management systems, they are then able to spend more time in discussions, reading through the responses, really understanding what each student's background is, what they want to focus on, and then give feedback on more on subjective assessments in a bit more detail, in a way that connects with their experiences, that becomes more relatable. So while there are challenges to this as well, with students can have another tab open on the side and copy answers. They can, they can do all sorts of things, but even those things can be avoided by the way that you design your course. You can also use other tools to address that. There's a lot of proctoring services to help faculty have proctored exams. So at this point, sometimes it feels like when I find faculty using traditional tools, I'm like, okay, I understand that you're doing that, but trust me, your life will be easier if you just if you try this out. So and a lot of people really enjoy it as well. Like students, if you ask them to, Parsons is an art school, and people couldn't imagine having an art school which was revolving around a studio and a physical space to move in an online medium where people are either showcasing a final product, their process, or demonstrating something. But it turns out everyone does that on a daily basis on Instagram and TikTok, when they upload pictures of things that they're working on, or they make TikToks of a process that they followed for a DIY project, or demonstrate even a dance is similar to demonstrating a particular skill. And all of the same things can be accomplished if you want to demonstrate a skill as well in an online environment. So you can set up the same assessment online, and it can do a lot more as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that perspective. Since we're all kind of in that creative space of education, this one is for Ingeborg and Wajahat. How do we address concerns regarding students' attention spans in the digital age and maintain their focus during learning activities?
Honestly, I'm not that concerned. I see students get immensely immersed in the most nerdy of subjects and spending hours on it. I think it's more our responsibilities as educators and curriculum designers is to make immersive experiences, and whether it's making great problem-based projects for the students, or providing them explainer videos, or whatever it is. I think as long as we do our job correctly, it's never really going to be a problem, because young people wants to learn and are very, very knowledge hungry. So I don't really see it as a problem yet.
Thank you. Uh-oh, Wajahat, I think we lost your sound.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was saying I completely agree on that, and we've our team has this debate every now and then when we're making videos, or should we have this under 5 minutes? Should we have this under 3 minutes? Can we have this longer to be like 15 minutes, 30 minutes, like a normal lecture or a demo? And the thing that we always come down to is, if it's necessary to spend time on this, it needs time. Some things you just can't cut short. If students may have, they may struggle with their attention span, but you can't always try catering to that. By catering to it, you're enabling something that is that's not really going to benefit them, but also at the same time, it's sort of like you need to intentionally have these things in there. For example, you can have a short video which students can skim through, but they won't, and it will cover essentials, but there's things to be gained by giving things their due time. For example, you may pick up the same information from a 3-minute YouTube video as you would from an hour-long podcast, or maybe an even longer book. But all of us know that there's a lot of subtext that you pick up from longer form content that you won't be able to pick up from something that's shorter. So while you can incorporate that to and students will say that this was really nice, it was really high quality, really quick and easy, bite-sized stuff. Students really like that. They really enjoy that. They can also accomplish the same thing by the 2x button on every video. You should still design for what needs to be designed and is important, rather than specifically catering to this one thing. It's a different ball game altogether, catering to audiences who may struggle with autism and need attention on that side, but a different thing for students who are struggling with TikTok. So yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I have
appreciate that.
I
Go
have an
ahead.
add-on to that, because I totally agree. And I think that we can use like the small bite-sized explainer video kind of ish formats to like make a hook, because when the student gets like interested in the subject, they're actually willing to go through great length to learn more, and then they will listen to the 2-hour podcast, and they will read the book about the subject. So I think we really need to let ourselves get inspired by how they do it on YouTube, and how they address subjects on YouTube and TikTok, like use the wording, and then afterwards they will like trickle down. If like we hook them, they will just find all these learning materials themselves. So I think if we do a good job at the beginning at introducing to these new subjects, they will automatically like widen their own horizon and find their own materials.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. There's
I just
definitely
want to
something
add
you said.
one small thing.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that I like everything that the other panelists said, for sure. And also I feel like we often forget that like no matter what age we are, like we want to have fun. So make your content fun. Like people think that like, oh, once you're teaching adults, you have to be more serious. No, make it fun. We all want to play. We all want to learn. Learning is like part of our natural like process. We always want to be learning, but make it fun and people will show up.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about creating innovative and engaging content and making it fun for all audiences. Yeah, go ahead, Ingeborg. I'm sorry.
I just say, I just very, very much agree.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So as we go ahead and wrap up the panel discussion, I do want to present one more question to all the panelists. What needs to change and what needs to stay the same? I'll give you a moment to marinate on that. What needs to change and what should stay the same?
I can say after living in the US and then now living in Europe, and Ingeborg mentioned this earlier about data. In the US, there's like no protection of our data, basically at all. So that would be a great change to see like worldwide where everyone's data is protected. I think that's really important, and their privacy. And then, so keeping the data in the EU, these data regulations in the EU, and then changing it worldwide so that they can follow a similar model. And then making sure people have access is a big change.
Got it. Yeah, thank you.
If I could change one thing, I think it would be the idea of that there is specific subjects or things we need to learn that they can only be learned in one way, or there's a right way of learning. Especially the old professors as I'm working with, they very much have the attitude of I learned it this way. This is the right way. So there is an attitude. I won't say a problem, but there is I would really like to expand on like how we learn stuff and people learn stuff in different ways, and very much how can we use technology to accommodate different needs. We talked about autistic people, neurodivergent people, stuff like that. So I would be happy to engage in that conversation, like how could we do it differently?
Wonderful, thank you.
And since everyone's talked about things they want to change, I guess I can talk about something that would be nice to maybe see it stay the same, and that is, I think right now where this was a conversation last year, a really big one around the metaverse and VR and AR. And that is something that is going to be developing a lot faster in the coming years. And it is going to be a big part of education and life in general. Right now, we're at a point where we sort of have a balance between our physical lives and our virtual lives, which is, day by day tilts more and more towards the virtual and away from, away from physical. But this balance between these two is something that everyone will still need. It's healthy. There's things to gain from it as well, and it works in a way that supports a lot of the things that we want to accomplish. So I hope that stays the same even with the advent of all of these upcoming technologies. It's just my personal take. A lot of people would rather have the really nice Apple AR headset, but yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you all for your take on what needs to change and what needs to stay the same. I'd like to take a moment now and to invite the audience for any questions that they may have. A few minutes for that. I do just ask a couple of things from the audience. Down at the bottom of your screen, if you would use the reactions to raise your hand. And if you feel comfortable enough, go ahead and come off camera and let us know who your question is targeted to and present your question. Yeah. And also, Nabil, if you could help me make sure I don't miss anyone's hand or anything.
Okay, so I'll be giving you a question shortly. Just give me a minute.
Okay, thank you.
So somebody sent a question directly to me instead of writing it into chat box. I'm just going to paste it there so you can read it and answer accordingly.
Awesome. Okay, so we do have a question from the chat, and the question is, how can we make sure students have enough time for activities not involving screens while still using digital devices for learning? Interesting. Anyone like to take that one on? Okay, Andrea?
I was thinking about this earlier. I think it was with your very first question about, I don't remember exactly the question, but I thought of this and how to make it more like personable. And I was thinking about this and how in this like fantasy world that I've created in my head, where we have all this like very targeted learning and people can learn everything they need to learn in like in not an 8-hour work day or school day or whatever. They can do it much faster. And then our focus of like in-person things then becomes like what brings us joy, not just like school and learning and being in school and sitting on a desk for 8 hours a day. And so instead of doing that, we have students can choose what time of day they want to learn. And then the rest of the day is focused around like the extracurricular activities, sports that kids want to do, music, art, I don't know, building things, engineering, anything that they're interested in. It'd be, again, this is like a fantasy world that I've created in my head where students and teachers have more time because their learning is so much more curated that then what do we do with the rest of the time? Well, what we should be doing is what makes us human, what makes us want to be here and be happy and share with each other. I feel like people are like, oh, I have more time, I should be working more. No, let's focus on like what makes us human and what makes us happy. So that is my ideal. I don't know where that will happen, but that's what I would love to see with the future.
Thank you. I really appreciate that perspective. That was beautiful. In your perfect world. I love that. The next question that we have from chat is, how do we help teachers gain the necessary knowledge and self-assurance? Oh, and Ingeborg, you want to take this one, or you had something to add to the other one?
No, it's this one.
Okay, gotcha. So how do we help teachers gain the necessary knowledge and self-assurance to keep up with and adjust to new technologies regularly?
It's difficult. Some teachers have already done their homework and know how to use all different apps and tools and some teachers really need help. And it can be everything from showing them how teams work to have a discussion about writing a manuscript for an explainer video. It's not the same thing as writing an academic article. And this is mind-boggling for a lot of them. So it's a lot about a discussion about digital formats and which benefits they have, didactic and pedagogic benefits they have, and stuff like that. So yeah, we need to educate the educators, and it's very individual based because every educator come with different backgrounds and different needs, so it's very peer-to-peer oriented. And then as a curriculum designer, I help them produce what they need in order to make what they imagine in their heads. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Definitely need to educate the educator. Go ahead, Wajahat.
Yeah, and not trying to sort of promote myself, but you need more instructional designers. You definitely, like every university, every school needs instructional designers, a dedicated team which is there for teachers and faculty to help them with the tools, to help them build courses, to help them stay updated. It's a necessity at this point, and there's a lot that instructional designers can offer. And secondly, once again, with the stuff GPT-4 can do, I've been working with some faculty. I've been showing them that, this is what you can also use this for as a teaching expert, someone that's easily accessible and can almost solve everything that you want. That's going to really help out in terms of building content. Even Ingeborg, we've tried this out with some faculty who used to write in a very academic style, and we used to take their content and ask ChatGPT to write this in a script format, or change its tone, write it in the form of a demo, and it does wonders. So teaching them how to use that sort of equips them to be more confident in troubleshooting and learning themselves.
Wonderful. Thank you all for those insights. We appreciate it. We're down to our final two questions. So how can we address copyright and intellectual property concerns when incorporating third-party content into our digital learning materials?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if I understand the question. Like, don't use content you don't have the rights for.
I think maybe with the issue of like AI using like artists to like learning data, that's what I'm assuming the question is about. But I'm not like an expert on this. I'm not sure if we are the experts on like how AI is getting its data to learn, and who, like, what copyrights they're going against. So I'm not sure if we can answer this that well.
Yeah. But I also I think I also understand where this is coming from. It's basically like, when we're building a course and we want to share, let's say, a textbook with students, we know it's an expensive textbook. Do we share a library copy with it or things like that? And there is a chance, if you're using an online medium, some faculty or some student even may end up using copyrighted material in a way that it's not supposed to be used. What I've learned over there generally is there are easier, the copyright law is a bit more flexible when material is used for the sake of education. But if you're referencing things correctly, if you are if you're using things from a library instead of downloading it and sharing it, and using tools that have copyright checkers like Canvases and LMS that can check that for you, you can try controlling that as well.
Awesome, thank you. And the last fielded question we have is, do you believe that organizations are equally accepting towards the education acquired through online platforms as compared to traditional education?
I think this is so subjective. It's so like, it depends on what field you're in. It depends what country you're in. It depends on what you're trying to, like, obviously, if you're trying to become a medical doctor, they probably want you to have some hands-on experience. But I know in the world of like coding, you can teach yourself. You can teach yourself anything. And all these companies care about is that you can code, you can build something, and they just want you to show them that.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Like there's some fields where it's very common, design, code. Like you can't become like a motion grapher in Denmark. So it's 100% YouTube on my part. And that's just how things is, like in some fields.
Yeah, it's very subjective. I think you're right. Thank you all. And for the questions, we really appreciate those audience questions. Wrapping things up, I would like to open it up very quickly for closing remarks from our panelists. If you have any more insight or your perspective on technology and the use of education.
For me, it's just always about access. Oh, sorry. For me, it's just always about access. Just making sure that we can give people the tools they need to have access to the internet, to these platforms, to the software, so that everyone has an equal playing field when it comes to learning.
Thank you.
I have a pet peeve about combining gaming and learning experiences. I think we are like the first wave of gamification had a lot, like left a lot to wish for, and I think we are seeing a second wave coming in now, where I think that gaming and learning experiences is going to take us to a new level, and I think it's a train that you should hurry to get on before it takes off.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and mine would just be to stay optimistic about education and educational technologies, and try out as much as you can, try out the new tools, see what they can do, try to learn from them, try incorporating them, and as much as you can. But it's the optimism that can get you through and help you meet all of the challenges.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you all for your presence and being here. I think we can all agree that technology is merging quite rapidly with education, and there's so many advances that we can utilize to really grow the field and reach every learner out there. So we appreciate your input today. And so this concludes our panel discussion on technology or education in the technology age. I'd like to throw it back to Nabil so we can go ahead and wrap it up. But thank you for your time and your input. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys, for coming on to the panel, for the panelists and the members who've just joined. So we'll be ending our meeting here. So again, thank you so much for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye.